Alverstoke Antiviral questions the very meaning of life. We catch up with Kate, and Colin and I chat about smallness and youngness. I'm Andy and you're watching Alverstoke Antiviral. Well, Colin, today we are going to do our catch up, the Sunday rechew of the talk you gave on Sunday. So we are going to try and go for about 5 minutes, and I'm going to ask you some questions. The time starts now. Colin, can you remember vaguely what your sermon was about on Sunday?
Well, one aspect of it was not being like the Gentiles in the way they lord it over others. You are not to be like that, Jesus says. That was one aspect. So we're to learn to serve. Greatest among you shall be the youngest. Yes.
Yeah. So what do you think that means in terms of practice, like not being like the Gentile rulers?
I think it isn't. It is not only a call to rethink what it is to be a leader by listening to what Jesus has to say. So it's learning that actually leadership isn't a step up to greater privilege or a step up to tell other people what to do. It's to lead by example, and it's to learn to take the humble role of serving and caring for the needs and to some degree the wants of others.
Yeah. And in terms of becoming like the youngest, Jesus says, what do you think that means?
So I think young people don't tend to assert themselves. Young people, really young, sort of defer to others, recognize wisdom to some degree, are dependent. So I think there's an element of that, of being willing to listen to what people need and want and what their pains and difficulties are, in order that you might bring help both through teaching, through words, but also through action. And through time.
Yeah, I saw there was a line in the passage as well about Jesus saying, I'm come among you as one who serves. So in some ways he is modeling that, isn't he? And he models
consistently.
Yeah.
And that's quite striking. It's sort of I know we're looking at Ecclesiastes, we did Proverbs last week, this sort of reversal of what you might expect, and contrast as well, sort of a swing from sitting at the table to serving. You think they're the biggest, but no, this is the one who actually rules, Jesus. Yeah, I think it's very much countercultural, because we're mainly Gentiles at church. Yeah.
Yeah. And we can't help but think in that way, can we? And so the message of a saviour who would go to the cross to deny himself for love of others, and say, not what I want, but what you need. That's an enormously radical message, because it goes against how we think.
Yeah, no, it really does. And you'll get it not only in the way Jesus goes to the cross, particularly there, but also in his teaching, like, if Roman soldier, it seems to apply, tells you to carry his load for a mile, carry it for 2. So going further than people might ask you to.
Yes. Okay. Next question. What do you think it means when it talks about I'm going to confer a kingdom on the 12 apostles? He says, I'm conferring a kingdom.
Yeah, who suggested that as a question? So that does imply that Jesus is conferring leadership onto the apostles, but a leadership that he is already exempling, because it's his kingdom that eventually they'll inherit, not their own. It comes as a gift from him, but it's to lead the apostles into the task of exempling Jesus in their leadership and in their wisdom and teaching, which has all come from Jesus, in the way that they deal with future followers and disciples. I think that's what it is, isn't it? It's so difficult, isn't it? Because as soon as you think of conferring a kingdom on them, you think, oh, look, I've stepped up a notch. And that's where we have to watch ourselves, that we don't just exhibit the same characteristics as the world around us. Yeah.
Yeah. And here's another question. Jesus talks to Peter, and he says that, Satan wants to sift you like wheat, but I've prayed for you. And it's that moment where Jesus, the enormity that Jesus says, I'm praying for you. And we don't often think about how Jesus prays for us, but there is a theme in the Bible that actually Jesus prays for us, isn't there?
Yeah, and I was looking at that a little bit today. Yeah, we tend to revert again to our sort of cultural norm of we've got to do everything, so we must pray more, we must work harder, we must do this. But actually, what is working out in the disciples in this particular conversation is that actually Jesus is working on their behalf, and they're actually benefiting from what he is asking the Father because it's being worked out in their lives. And it's far more significant what Jesus does than what we do. Not that we should give up praying, we should continue to pray. We looked at that a few weeks ago. But it's that recognition of actually really what's much more is going on because of Jesus and how the Father is at work than it is about us. And if only we could get that a little bit more into our heads, it would probably remove some of our stress and anxiety to think actually the Trinity is at work in his people. And we can be encouraged hugely by that. Yeah, it's not all about me, it's all about him.
Do you think it's he's praying for, because I was looking at John just before, where Jesus prays around the Last Supper, and he prays for protection for the disciples. He prays for protection for them, and he uses the word protection. And we tend to think of Jesus prays for us in the sense of he makes atonement for us, and he pleads for mercy on our behalf as our mediator. But there's a sense in which the Spirit intercedes with us in Romans 2, and that Jesus prays for his people in a way that affects how we live as much as how we are saved. Do you think that's right?
I think that's very much so. And you notice that he says this in the context of trials that the disciples have experienced with Jesus, and also with the onset of the Satan, the deceiver, at this particular point of time. And this will continue on through the book of Acts. He is out to stop and to spoil and corrupt the lives of believers and dismantle what Jesus is putting together. Yeah.
Yeah, but thank heavens Jesus is praying against that, isn't he?
Yeah, he is. Yeah.
Great. Well, Colin, I think that's more or less 5 minutes. So thank you very much for the Sunday Read-You.
My pleasure.
Well, I'm joined now with Kate. Kate, how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm all right, thank you. Yeah, keeping busy.
Keeping busy.
Yeah.
Kate, you've been part of church for a long time, haven't you, I suppose?
Yeah, I have actually. I think I came before I got married to Ian, so it's probably about 23 years.
23 years, wow.
Yeah, long time.
How is Ian? Is he all right?
Yeah, he's fine. He's busy. He's on late shifts tonight, so we won't see him now till tomorrow. But yeah, he's behind the scenes like he likes to be and keeping busy that way.
Yeah. And are the family doing well?
Yeah, Edward's doing A-levels at Bay House now, and he was thinking about going to St Vincent College to do a sports diploma, but last minute decided to play it safe and do A-levels. And yeah, he's getting into the swing of it. The lessons are 2.5 hours long, so it's quite tiring because of the way they're doing it because of COVID. It's a big jump from 50-minute lesson. And Ruby's got back into school life. It's much better for her to be going to school and having routine. Yes.
Yeah. And how did you generally find the lockdown months and the time since then over the summer?
Yeah, it's been a big learning curve, hasn't it? I think I was more scared of the whole thing at the beginning because of lots of unknowns and the instant changes we had forced on us. And I think you may remember it. We think Ian had COVID in March. So that wasn't very nice. And we locked him away in Ruby's room. And it looked like he had leprosy, because we just had to leave food at the door and just let him get on with being ill. So that wasn't very nice for him. But thankfully he wasn't hospitalized. So we coped, and he is much better now and able to get on with work. Yeah.
Oh, great. And I heard that your work is changing as well. Do you want to tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, okay. So I was working part-time at St Mary's Alverstoke as their family minister, and it was becoming clearer and clearer that they weren't going to renew the post as it was, because they realised that the job was far too big for one person for only 25 hours. So, and because of COVID, things have changed as well. So I started looking for work, because there's not many jobs that specialise in sort of families and children's work in the Christian scene. So a few people approached me and said, Kate, have you seen the job at Bishop's Waltham at St Peter's Church? And I ignored it for a while, and then I thought, well, why not? I know normally I'd prefer to do mission on my doorstep, but anyway, I went and applied, and I got the job, and I couldn't believe it, because, you know, it wasn't what I was looking for. It was, but it wasn't. So, and it's brilliant. I mean, I've only been there since the 1st of October, but I really sense it's a Bible-believing evangelical Church of England, and the vicar is just great, and I just feel like I'm going to have fun with him and the team, and I can be me and not try and be someone I'm not, which is just a perfect match. So yeah, so I'm going to be part of the job. We'll be working in a little rural church called Blessed Mary in Upham, and it's honestly, it's like being in Cornwall. You have to drive through little windy lanes to get to it, and it's in a very quite upper class posh area where everybody has huge houses and horses, and it's yeah, it's not where I thought I'd be, but God's put me there, and they want me to create families ministry, so it's perfect match again for me, because it's sort of pioneering. And I can put my stamp on it, and God can use the gifts I've got to set up things with families, the assemblies in the local school, coffee mornings, helping and discipling people in their faith. So yeah, so that sounds brilliant. And then the other job is working at St Peter's, which is the main part of the job. And I'm going to be working with a group of teenagers called Group With No Name, and they meet on Sunday evenings, and it's heavily male. So we've got lots of young lads going and a handful of girls, and yeah, just doing youth club stuff, and then bringing Jesus into it. And yeah, I'm excited about that, because they're really good fun to be around, and they keep you young.
Yeah. So what would it be good to pray for you going into this job, that people tend to pray for?
I think that I can manage my time really well, and that I don't try, I'm an ideas person, and that I don't have hundreds of ideas and then burn out, and I need to be able to manage a few things well and get volunteers on board and excited about the projects that hopefully God has already in place, that are just going to start, and just to try and relax and be Kate, and not try and be somebody I'm not. Yeah.
Great. Well, I'm sure people would love to pray for you and for your work there. Yeah, it sounds exciting. So yeah, we look forward to hearing how it goes and things.
Thank you.
Yeah.
The other work, obviously, that the AEC support is Chatterbox, and Chatterbox is part of that's my Tuesday job. So again, can you pray for the work of Chatterbox? Obviously, we've been meeting up in the summer at the Ferry Gardens for like socially distanced socials, and we've been meeting at the beach. We've been doing church all over Gosport, which has been exciting. But now we're back at Logos every other week, but we can only have 4 groups of 6. So the dynamics are really changing, and just that we can keep in touch with people, because our ministry is very scattered now, and we've got to do church out of what we used to, so that that we don't forget people and we keep in touch with people, so that the scattered Chatterbox church still stay together, and it doesn't fizzle out, because it's people need it so much. They need the Lord, and they need company, and like we all do. Yeah,
and I suppose COVID has really maybe shone a light on that need for all of us, but certainly for other people as well, in terms of company, and actually, as a forum to engage with Jesus as well. Yeah, great. Well, Kate, thank you so much. It's great to hear from you.
You're welcome.
I guess we'll look forward to seeing you when we see you.
Yeah. Thanks for letting me waffle on.
No worries. Bye.
Okay, bye. Take care, everybody.
And now we will segue to Ecclesiastes, the easiest book in the Bible to spell. Not really, but it's one of the wisdom books in the Bible. And you might remember we did the big wisdom book, Proverbs, the other week, didn't we? And you might remember, if you were here for that, and you were definitely here for that, Colin, so you have no excuse, that there was an overarching message to Proverbs, a message that there was value in wisdom, and to be on the wise path was to be to fear the Lord, and that is the way to life, and that is the way to blessing. But there are 2 books in the Bible that take this idea that wisdom is the right path to be on, and they put it in a furnace. And there's the book of Job that takes the idea of wisdom and puts it in the furnace of innocent suffering to test it. And there's the book of Ecclesiastes, and the book of Ecclesiastes puts wisdom in a different furnace, a furnace best summed up by one word. One word. Now, Colin, can you think what one word in the book of Ecclesiastes would sum it up?
Meaningless.
Meaningless. There we go. The words of the teacher, son of David, king of Jerusalem. This is Ecclesiastes 1. Meaningless. Meaningless, says the teacher. Utterly meaningless. Everything is meaningless. Now, you might have seen that translated other ways as well. Can you think of some other ways that's been translated?
Older version would have vanity. I don't know what the message has. Is that pointless?
The message has smoke.
Oh, smoke.
Which is a bit of a stretch, really. But yeah, you get vanity. You get futility. That's the HSBC. Others have suggested useless, absurd, enigmatic. The word here is hevel. Hevel. And I've got a live action demonstration of hevel. You can see here I have my beloved hot water bottle, and we're going to have a hevel demonstration. Because hevel is going to...
water bottle, isn't that making it an idol?
Yeah, probably. There we go. As you can see, my lenses are now nicely misted up. Whew. And then all of a sudden, it's gone. And that is hevel. Hevel means vapor. It means mist. It's an insubstantial fluid that you can't grab and you can't get hold of. Some have even suggested it could be taken as bubble or soapsuds. And this could read, soapsuds, says the teacher. Everything has soapsuds. I personally prefer vapor. I think that catches it quite nicely. It's what comes out of a kettle when it boils. It's that stuff that's there and then it's out and then it's gone. Because that's the idea. The teacher is saying, the main thrust of his book, which he says right at the start and at the end, is that life, everything is vapor. It is hevel. It is meaningless. And the message of the book is exposing, trying to open our eyes to how life under the sun, taken on its own terms, if we look at the world, we will see that it's actually vapor. And if we treat life as ultimate and permanent, we're going to find ourselves clutching at mist. And here, I think there are three aspects of the mistiness that the book really brings out. I'm going to run through them for you. Three aspects. So life is vapor. Point number one, it's vapor because it does not satisfy. It does not satisfy. And this is an idea that might resonate with lots of us. It doesn't satisfy. Do we find satisfaction in life? Here is Ecclesiastes 2. Just look what this says. It says, the teacher says, I denied myself nothing my eyes desired. I refused my heart no pleasure. My heart took delight in all my labor, and this was the reward for my toil. Yet, when I surveyed all my hands had done, and what I had toiled to achieve, everything was vapor, meaningless, like chasing after the wind. Nothing was gained under the sun. It does not satisfy. That's his point. And the very third verse of the book asks that question, what do people gain from all their labors? You know, what do you gain from your career? What do you gain from what you produce? What do you gain from what you construct when you build a family, or when you build a reputation, or when you build up a business? Work does not ultimately satisfy, does it? And history is full of people who have gone to the top and risen to the highest pinnacles of achievement and then found there's nothing there. You might have heard the story of Johnny Wilkinson, who had a real taste of emptiness almost as soon as he'd won the World Cup with England. He talks about even before he left the stadium, he'd reached that peak in the career, and then he suddenly realized, he started to realize there was nothing there, and it wasn't satisfying him, and it wasn't enough. And many of us will feel that way. Life is vapor because it does not satisfy, number one. And the reason it doesn't satisfy partly is, number two, it does not last. It does not last. Now, Colin, do you want to have a read of this from chapter 2 of Ecclesiastes?
Yep. Then I said to myself, the fate of the fool will overtake me also. What then do I gain by being wise? I said to myself, this too is meaningless. For the wise, like the fool, will not be long remembered. The days have already come when both have been forgotten. Like the fool, the wise too must die. So I hated life, because the work that is done under the sun was grievous to me. All of it is meaningless, a chasing after the wind. And I hated all the things I had toiled for under the sun, because I must leave them to the one who comes after me.
And it really hammers home the point, doesn't it? That life doesn't last because death is coming. Because we have to leave things at the end there to the one who comes after us. And the day will come, verse 16, when both will be forgotten. And there's a big sense in this book that the reality of death relativizes all of our achievements. It vaporizes them. It means they won't last and we won't be able to benefit from them forever. They'll be gone. They'll be like vapor from a kettle because our lives are vapor. And this is a big problem for wisdom. Because do you remember the central idea that we saw with Proverbs is that wisdom is the path to pursue, because that's the path that leads to life and blessing. And hevel is like a furnace. And Ecclesiastes says, oh, really? Really? Well, how does that hold up in the face of death? Because if we're wise, what do I gain? Verse 15, the fate of the fool will overtake me also. What then do I gain by being wise? I said to myself, this too is meaningless. For the wise, like the fool, will not be remembered. Because you can live really well, or you can live really badly. But life under the sun shows us that both actually come to the same end. And all of the good decisions we make and the benefits we can build up through those are not going to last. If you can think of the person who you would most say has wasted their opportunities in life, that person is going to die, barring the second coming of Jesus, the same as you. You're going to end up with the same fate. And so the value of wisdom is totally called into question here. What is the value of wisdom? Because life doesn't last. Lest we start to think that life is like a slot machine that we can sort of manipulate to make sure wisdom gives us the perfect results here and now. So that's the second point. It doesn't satisfy, it does not last. Third point, life makes no sense. It makes no sense. And this is a point that I think will ring true for all of us. I'll read this one out. This is Ecclesiastes 9. I have seen something else under the sun. The race is not to the swift, or the battle to the strong, nor does food come to the wise, or wealth to the brilliant, or favour to the learned. But time and chance happen to them all. Moreover, no one knows when their hour will come. As fish are caught in a cruel net, or birds are taken in a snare, so people are trapped by evil times that fall unexpectedly on them. And the point here is that life makes no sense. Often the results we see people getting are not their just deserts. Verse 11, the race is not to the swift. You would think in every race the fastest person wins. But it's not always true, is it? You would think in life the wise live best. Food comes to the wise, and wealth goes to the brilliant, or favour goes to the learned. But Ecclesiastes says, I've seen the opposite happening. Time and chance happen to them all. Unpredictable disasters come out of nowhere. People are trapped by evil times that no one sees coming. And things we build up, be that businesses, be that plans, be that other things, they are thrown upside down by events we just can't predict. And verse 12 is the key point here. No one knows when their hour will come. We don't know the future. We don't know the future, and therefore life makes no sense. We can't work it out. We can't plot what is going on and what is directly going to happen as a result of our actions. Sometimes the opposite happens to what we think should happen. And so life becomes this sort of inscrutable riddle where we see events that we can't explain and we can't understand, and the rhyme and the reason is totally beyond us. We can't grab hold of them. It's like vapor. We can't make sense of it. And for that reason, life does not satisfy. So we've had it does not satisfy, it doesn't last, and it makes no sense. It becomes this riddle. And the lives we live, if we look at them on their own terms, under the sun, in and of themselves, they are nothing but vapor. And they're not ultimate, and they're not fulfilling. And Colin, this made me think of a Queen song, the end of Bohemian Rhapsody. How does it go?
Nothing really matters. That one?
Yeah. Anyone can see. Nothing really matters to me.
Yeah.
Now, this might throw up a question about, well, does life have any point at all? Have you come across that question?
Well, yeah, sometimes you tend to think it yourself, don't you? Especially when life at times feels like Groundhog Day. A repeating treadmill of the same sorts of things. Yeah, even more so in COVID.
Well, that's very Ecclesiastes 1, isn't it? With the wind going round and round, and the streams flow to the sea, but it's never full, and we go round and round, and the sun rises and the sun sets. Yes. And this raises the question, well, does this mean there's no point in living? Wisdom has no value, so let's just go out and have a good time. Now, lots of people might think, well, that is the point of Ecclesiastes. And bits of the book sound like that. But actually, it's not the point. The message of Ecclesiastes is that life is vapor. And some people will take that to despair. But if you read the whole, it quickly becomes clear that that's not the whole story. The very end of the book tells us that everything has been heard, and here's the conclusion. The conclusion is, fear God and keep his commands. It speaks of meaning and purpose and value in life instead of the disintegration of it. And the fearing of the Lord is the heart of wisdom, isn't it? And even in the body of the book, the writer says things like, well, it's better to be wise. It's still better to be wise in this world, even though the wise don't succeed all the time. And there's a sense in which he's holding in tension the futility of the world with the value of wisdom and his belief that actually fearing the Lord is worthwhile. And here's how Ecclesiastes shows us those two things fit together. It's actually, life is vapor, but God is the one behind this. God has done this. Life is vapor, but this is God's doing. And there's a very vaporous city. And this is so clear in Ecclesiastes. God is the one at work. This is Ecclesiastes 1. He says, I applied my mind to study and explore by wisdom all that is done under the heavens. What a heavy burden God has laid on mankind. I have seen all the things that are done under the sun. All of them are meaningless, are chasing after the wind. What is crooked cannot be straightened. What is lacking cannot be counted. And I'm so convinced that that crooked image is really important in the book. It comes up more than once. And he's talking about the world, the way that God has made the world crooked. It's bent. There's something lacking from it that can't be counted. It doesn't add up. It's vapor. And he says this is a heavy burden God has laid on mankind. God has actually laid this burden on us, this burden of death, this burden of meaningless vapor, lest we start to find ultimate meaning in our present lives, lest we start over-investing, lest we think we can suss out the riddles of the universe and manipulate it by our wisdom. All that is beyond us. And Ecclesiastes says, actually, God has set it beyond us. Ecclesiastes talks about the fall as well. It says in chapter 7, God created mankind upright, but they have gone in search of many schemes. And now you've got the creation of the world and you've got the fall. You've got sin. And because of that, the world has been subjected to frustration, Romans tells us, to futility, to vapor. The world has been made crooked in this unsatisfying way. Why? Because God has a purpose. He wants to bring about two responses that both stem from us not treating this world as ultimate. And we see this in Ecclesiastes 3. This is after the great big poem about time. There's a time to be born and a time to die and a time for everything. And he's reflecting on the vapor and he says, what do workers gain from their toil? I have seen the burden God has laid on the human race. So God has made it this way. He has made everything beautiful in its time. So there's a time where things happen and we have a span of time to live, but he's also set eternity in the human heart. And there's this tension, isn't there, between the short-lived nature of things and our beauty and the beauty of the world, and yet the eternity we sense in our hearts. And no one can fathom what God has done from beginning to end. We know there's an eternity, we know there's a bigger picture, but we can't fathom it looking at the world and trying to read events. And so he says, I know there is nothing better for people than to be happy and do good while they live, that each of them may eat and drink and find satisfaction in all their toil. This is the gift of God. God has a gift here, and it is satisfaction, joy. I know that everything God does will endure forever. Nothing can be added to it and nothing taken from it. That's God's ordering of events, I think. God does it so that people will fear him. So we've got two responses there. We've got the response of joy and we've got the response of fear. God wants two responses for making this world vaporous. A joy, not a fragile joy that clings and searches for fulfillment in making this life ultimate and ultimately meaningful and valuable. But a joy that comes from relaxing a bit and recognizing the vapor and recognizing that this is not going to last forever. And therefore is freed to enjoy life for what it is and to accept God's finite gifts for what they are, while looking to God for ultimate fulfillment, for fearing him and looking beyond ourselves and beyond this life to eternity and our future with him if we trust him through Jesus. So that, I think, is the heart of the book. It's about life being vapor, but this is actually part of the way God has made the world, and he wants us to see it so that we have a qualified joy, not a pleasure-seeking joy, but a qualified joy, a joy that comes from fearing him and realizing that this life is not permanent. And so, application time, Colin. Let's say you're this man and you're going through a midlife crisis, or you're a teenager going through an early life crisis and you're discovering some of the vapor of the world and how it doesn't satisfy and it's meaningless. What would be a good response from Ecclesiastes, do you think, to someone experiencing a mouthful of vapor?
Well, I from what we've looked at and from the book of Ecclesiastes, we need to seek a satisfaction, because we do want to be satisfied, a satisfaction that is lasting, a satisfaction that is found in more than, for instance, getting together what pleases your eye and what you enjoy. A satisfaction that can be rooted in someone who is not vapor himself, but who is lasting and commits himself to us if we'll trust him. And life not lasting, again, the God that we know is one who's everlasting. So if we can trust him, if we can receive life from him and through his son, as we find out, we'll know that actually this life is vapor, but if it's lived in fear and trust of him, it will lead to something meaningful and lasting. And it shall not ever be taken away from us. So lasting inheritance. And what was the third thing you said? Vapor doesn't last. Life doesn't last.
Oh, it doesn't make sense.
Doesn't make sense. Yeah, and I think only in the final days, when those who've trusted him go to be with him, then we'll see the strands, as it were, come together and realize God's purposes in a way that we never will now, which I think's humbling in a sense, because especially those who know the Bible well and have walked with God a long time tend to decide that life does have purpose and all that. And Ecclesiastes is a humbling book, because that experience lingers in the heart of us all, in that man you just showed a picture of. And we need to realize that actually life is in much more than the material. It's got to be found in the one who made all of that, in the spiritual.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a fascinating point in the book where it talks about don't be over righteous and don't be over wise. And it says the one who fears God will avoid these extremes. And you think, oh, well, that's not my problem, being over wise or being over righteous. What could it mean? But I think what it's getting at is a wisdom that tries to make this world ultimate and make it work and make it make sense for us. It might be trying to totally make sense of our present experience. Why did this happen? Because this. It might be trying to make life work by me making good decisions, therefore avoiding disastrous outcomes. But, life isn't like that, is it?
No.
And actually, we will drive ourselves to distraction trying to do that, and we'll end up with a mouthful of vapor, won't we?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because and anxiety and all the rest, because we're trying to keep hold of vapor, and it's always slipping through our fingers.
Yeah. And the world would say, therefore there's no meaning, therefore go and throw yourself in a pleasure binge. And Ecclesiastes says, no, do fear the Lord, do be wise, because he will judge the world. But at the same time, don't overinvest in the present, in terms of this life trying to make it ultimate. Yeah.
Do not be like them who do that.
Indeed. Yeah. Well, thank you very much, Colin. I think that's all for now. So join us another time. And until that time, stay close to Jesus and wash your hands.